welcome back to Imperfect Action. This is episode 710. Today, I'm so excited to bring to you my good friend, mentor, podcasting expert, and AI expert, Ronsley Vaz. If not for Ronsley, this podcast probably wouldn't exist. So, we've been friends for probably about 7 years now. Ronsley's been in the podcasting world for 11 years, but he has an incredible background in computer engineering, software engineering, which makes him so perfectly positioned for this new world of AI, artificial intelligence. Maybe you've heard about ChatGPT, maybe you've been using it, maybe you are terrified of it. And in today's conversation, we are diving deep into what AI looks like, how it actually works, not how I originally thought it worked, and many of you might think that it works, and how you can start to use it in a more practical sense in your business. Now, Ronsley is an author, podcaster, TEDx speaker. He's the host of multiple podcasts, including his newest one, My AI Love Affair, where he talks about how he's used AI to save a heck of a lot of time in his business and in podcasting. He's been listened to more than 5.1 million times across 133 countries, and he's one of those people that I just call a smart cookie. He knows what he's talking about. He's incredibly clued in on all things AI. And I know you're going to get a lot out of today's conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the chat between me and Ronsley. Ronsley, welcome back to Imperfect Action. I mean, the last time you were here was actually Socialette. And I think you were interviewing me for maybe episode 300 or something like that. And now we're at episode 710. So it's really been quite a journey. I know. And to think that, 6 years ago, I told you I had this idea for a bite-sized business podcast and you were like, not a great idea. Go back to the drawing board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I would still say that to most people. And I don't necessarily think that, what you did was a great idea, but you managed to make it work. So good for you.
It's consistency, right? It's 3 episodes a week for 5.5 years. That's what it's been. So anyway, Ronsley, you have obviously got a huge background as a podcast producer, podcast marketing agency, all of the things podcasting. And now you have started another podcast called My AI Love Affair. What made you start this? What made you get into the world of AI and what made you start the podcast?
Well, before I was a podcaster and before everyone knew me as a podcaster, it's really weird because now no one could even imagine that I had a job at one point, but I did. I had a career and my formal training was a software engineer. So I did my bachelor's of computer science and engineering. Took 4 years to get that degree and gave 64 exams to get that degree in 4 years. Yeah. And following that, I worked for a few companies and then I went and got a master's of software engineering where I wrote a thesis on process quality. So now everyone talks about agile methods. My thesis was on agile methods and how to measure quality. And then I got my first job out of university, which was lucky because I got to implement my thesis and I took 2 companies to ISO 9001, which is a standard in which different companies are measured when it comes to quality processes. So companies get acquired as a result of this ISO 9001 or different types of different accreditations that they get because that certifies the company that they're doing the processes in the right way. They're not ad hoc. So they paid for an MBA, which I did at QUT, and I did that in psychology and leadership. So following all that, doing my master's of business administration, I saw business, which was crazy, and I saw the whole world as an opportunity, which I never saw before. And I thought, because I was always thought I was a technical person. Everyone told me that, hey, you're technically very gifted. You need to be a technical person, not even realizing that there was a whole area of business and management and that I was missing out on. And as soon as I got exposed to that, it just opened up a whole new world. And that's when I became an entrepreneur. So I started the new business because I've seen a lot of people give bad advice. In fact, when I was a podcaster, someone who just started a podcast started to help other people create podcasts, and it's probably works in a podcasting world, but it definitely does not work in an AI world. So, after much argument with myself about, I've built this brand as being the podcast guy, should I be the AI guy? After a lot of arguments with myself, I finally sort of stepped into that, and here we are.
So what is it about AI that's got you so excited? Like, obviously you've got such a huge background in all of the sciencey computer engineering stuff that's well over my head. But why are you so excited about AI as an entrepreneur, as a content creator, as a podcaster?
Yeah. I feel like it's important when things are not clear to make sure that you mention that they're not clear, like how you just mentioned, like these things are going over my head. Mm-hmm. And I feel like because of that, there is this reasoning to kind of really understand what artificial intelligence is. So let's break this down, right? It's very simple to think about artificial intelligence, but it's also very easy to get confused because we've been using search all this time. And we just think that we put stuff into ChatGPT, it's going and searching for something and it's coming and returning back like how Google used to. And I want to clarify that and say that artificial intelligence is just a silicon-based life form while we are a carbon-based life form. It can think like us, it can reason like us, and it is built on our neurology, it is built on our psychology, it is built on our long-term, short-term memory, it is built to think just like us and reason like us. The only difference is artificial intelligence right now is in its infancy. Okay. So it's still a kid learning, and there will be a point where that will flip. So I'm excited because I do not want to be the intelligent being that fears intelligence. And I want everyone else not to be in that same boat.
And I think the reason everyone's fearing it is because we just don't understand it. I mean, the way you explained it just then is the very first time I've heard it explained like that. And, you know, I've been using ChatGPT. I've got a whole bunch of apps, like all the AI apps and things. And that's the first time that I've actually thought of it in, wow, that is mind blowing. So like, where do we even begin with this? Like, in its infancy right now, where are some of the huge opportunities that business owners like you, like me, we can start to use that kind of AI in our businesses every day? And then where do you see it going 5 years, 10 years from now?
Well, let's deal with the first question. I think what's happening right now is that we all got to realize that artificial intelligence is going to easily be the biggest conversation of our lifetime. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm going to say that by magnitudes larger than anything we've thought about before, it's easily going to be the biggest conversation of our lifetime. It's going to change the way we do things. And if you think about the different ages that came, right? You had Industrial Revolution that made machines a commodity. So industry became a commodity. We now have, washing machines. We would not be caught dead 3 hours washing our clothes anymore, right? We just press the button because Industrial Revolution came, gave us machines, and machines can do a lot of cool things. Because of that Industrial Revolution, we built computers. Because of computers and digital storage, we were able to create the information age, which came after the industrial age. So industrial age, then information age, which commoditized information. So right now we have access to information all over whatever we want, really, on whatever we want to learn. Information is commoditized. Because of those two ages, the Industrial Revolution that gave machines and information revolution that gave information, we now have the intelligence revolution, which is commoditizing intelligence. Mm. So we need to understand that AI has just commoditized intelligence. So we got to use it in the right way. And the best way to use it is to understand that we need to be part of this conversation. So we need to use it for us to understand what to say or even how to begin the conversation. And the main thing is that we've got to use AI with empathy. That is probably, that one line might actually save our species. Because if we don't change the way we do things right now, we will be extinct soon.
So when you say use AI with empathy, what do you mean by that?
I mean by thinking, what does empathy mean? Thinking about the other person, right? Thinking about how you're using it, thinking about where it is applicable, not how am I going to benefit from it. It's like, where does empathy come into play? Empathy comes when you understand the other position. And I think that is super important. Right now, all we're thinking about is our position. And if we do not change that, there's lots of things, Steph, if we want to break this down. Think about history, right? Right now, artificial intelligence is amplifying what we have captured as history.
Yeah.
But who's written the history? White colonial people that have come and told indigenous people that their ways of doing things are uncivilized and this is the new way of doing things. While most of the first world is going back to those old ways of doing things like wisdom, ancestry, bloodline, things that are not present in the first world, however you want to look at that. And it's really important for us to capture those conversations, capture that wisdom that has been lost and destroyed and burnt in a lot of instances, because this way of doing things that this world is built on, where we have killed a lot of people, destroyed their heritage, and then decided to put our ways of doing things on them. If we multiply that, we don't have a choice. We don't have this. Think about that. If this kid is learning from us right now and it's learning that me, we don't have a choice, because it's going to be more intelligent than us at some point. And if our ways of doing things as the most intelligent species is to destroy ecosystems because it suits our needs, it's not difficult to think that will be the same thing that is put onto us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of a scary scenario that I think, more people need to be aware of. But I'm also thinking now, as people who are listening to this show are probably thinking, they're like, oh, that's terrifying. And they probably want to go and bury their head in the sand, because that's our first instinct whenever we come across something that is terrifying. Can you give us a little bit of good news? Is there something, what good is going to come out of this, assuming that we do start to use AI with empathy?
Well, that's it. If we just start to use AI with empathy, everything is good. Everything is good. We can solve some of the world's biggest problems. Think about it. We are on a planet right now where hunger and obesity this dichotomy still is around, right? We still have people starving and we still have people throwing away food. And that's a problem. And we could solve that. We could solve climate change. We could solve poverty. We could solve some of the world's biggest issues. We could actually become human beings as opposed to human doings, right? So if we think about the good news, I think people are only going to be scared if they think that they can't change. People are only going to be scared if they only think about themselves. And that's obviously scary, because we are not taught to think about other people. We're actually forced to think about ourselves. And in a lot of the instances, and in a lot of the literature, in some places, they kind of go, well, if you don't think about yourself, no one else will. And I think that is flawed in a lot of ways. Just like some of the earlier thinking about, taking care of your parents and making sure that that is part of the equation is also really important, because those are values that need to be carried on. And if we don't understand how our parents and our grandparents are really valuable in our life, and it's not like we're doing them a favor by helping them, but their wisdom is really important, then we might be able to understand how we play a role in artificial intelligence. Does that make sense?
So then, from more of a practical business perspective, what can we start to do with AI right now beyond just the basic ChatGPT, give me a metaphor for something that's really challenging, which is what I use today? But beyond the basic prompts, what can we start to do with it?
Well, I think in general, as a business owner, entrepreneurship is lonely, right? We're just kind of usually in a silo, and a lot of the times the people around us don't necessarily understand the way our brains work. However, the machines will, if we kind of ask it in the right way. So when we are ideating, that's probably the best time to use artificial intelligence. Ideation on our own. I remember when I first got into this online space, I was creating my first podcast, Bon Appetit. And actually just before that, I created this business where chefs would go into people's homes and cook for them. And as part of that exercise, I had to figure out what their fears were, pain points, aspirations, and all these kind of things. And it took me months to do research and figure that out. Now you can do that in seconds, in minutes, and you can refine that. And that's the empathy right there, because you're genuinely looking for what your clients care about, and you're looking for different ways to ideate to actually deal with that, as opposed to going, well, I have this product, let me just try and sell it in this new way because I got ChatGPT, and let me find different ways and analogies and metaphors to kind of sell this, as opposed to, hey, let me stress test my product. These are my clients. What are their fears, pain points, frustrations? What do they wish they can do after their pain points are fixed? Right? That is genuine empathy. Because once you figure that out and then you go, does my product actually give them that? And then if it does, great. Then you change your onboarding and make that better and give them the best platform for them to succeed on. Even that you can ideate using artificial intelligence, which is so useful because you're not trying to have to figure it out on your own. You know, you have someone else to bounce it off against. And that there is where artificial intelligence comes in really handy.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I am so big on customer research that I will suggest to all of my students, jump on a Zoom call and have a conversation with your ideal clients and keep asking them for the why behind every answer that they give you, so that you can get to the root of what they're telling you, rather than just like the surface level answer that they would give you in a survey. What you're telling me is then that ChatGPT can give us that, or not ChatGPT, but AI in general can give us that level of depth that we'd be able to get from having that conversation with a real human.
I think it'll be deeper. I think it'll be deeper than asking someone, because a lot of the times when you're asking someone the question, they are trying to figure out to give you the answer. And sometimes they're either giving you the answer because you're in front of them, or they're trying to make it up because they've not thought about it before. However, artificial intelligence doesn't have that bias and doesn't have that sort of thing. So you can actually refine and refine and refine until you get to a point where you kind of go, okay, that's exactly what I'm after. And I think that we are at a point right now where that intelligence is already available, and doing it manually is like going into the bathroom and washing your clothes for 3 hours.
Oh, okay. We can agree to disagree on that one for now. But you'll probably change my mind in a couple of months anyway.
I think it's really important to understand that you're not an expert in this situation right now, and to give that context, because that is really important if you're giving advice, right? And the world has changed dramatically in the last year. Dramatically. Like every day we wake up, the definition of intelligence has changed. 3 weeks ago, they did precision surgery with robotics and intelligence without a human intervention. So we've got to put this all in context, because I understand that you don't get it, and I understand that you disagree. But I would say that that is probably because of lack of information and knowledge. And I'd love for you to go deeper into that. Yeah, deeper into that, especially because all your listeners really need to get into it, because they need to be part of the conversation, and we need everyone to be part of this conversation. And we can't just not hear something because we don't agree with it. We need to have the dialogue.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where I'm trying to get everyone to have this conversation and understand where intelligence fits in to the way we
Mm.
think about the world.
No, so in a way, I kind of agree with you on that, in that I would hate somebody who's listening to this show to think that they can go to ChatGPT and say, give me all of the pain points for my ideal client, because you and I both know, like I know enough about AI to know that the output is only as good as what you give it. It's only as good as the input that you prompt it with. And for somebody who doesn't have an understanding of what kind of inputs to put into, say, ChatGPT, they're probably not going to get a very good quality output, which then can really be harmful to all of the content they're putting out there, the products they're putting out there, because they are addressing pain points that might not be correct because they haven't given it the right prompts. Does that make sense?
100%. It's like you're trying to write in Latin without knowing Latin. You don't know how to speak computers. Or if you don't know how to speak computers, learn how to speak computers before you decide that you want to use it for anything. So the same thing goes with any language, right? You're not going to write, or, have a different website in a different language if you don't know how to express yourself in that language. And any broken way of expressing yourself in that language will give you a broken response. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And that actually, that segues beautifully into one of the questions that I was going to ask you. And I'm going to ask it to you now. So what are some of the big mistakes that you're seeing people making? Obviously, putting in the wrong prompts, or not understanding really how to feed it those prompts to get the right outputs is a huge one. What else?
Well, I think in general, what tends to happen is in this digital world, we see other people doing stuff and we think that we need to be experts straight away. Or we think that we can learn it straight away. And this is the big misconception. Graphics designers come across, not graphics designers, people who are not graphics designers come across Canva and suddenly are graphics designers. But when you look at their work, you can tell that they are not graphics designers. It's no different in artificial intelligence. So really understanding how prompting works, really understanding what context is, really understanding how a computer thinks, or how we think, because that's exactly the way the computers are built. How we take information, how we process information. And here's the thing. Every business owner, the biggest jump they can go through is going from solopreneur to entrepreneur. Because from solopreneur to entrepreneur, you bring team into focus. And a lot of us are not business owners or haven't learned to be business owners. And that big jump is a whole new learning, because we've got to learn recruitment, we've got to learn team management, we've got to learn operations, we've got to learn culture. There's a lot of new aspects from business play that come into play when we're talking about solopreneur to entrepreneur jump. Now, artificial intelligence is no different. It is, if you don't have a background and you just copied someone else's prompt and you've got a result and you don't know what to do with it from there, that is a problem right there. So really going in and understanding how artificial intelligence works, especially prompting, because now you see multimodal functions coming into GPT-4, which is fascinating because
what is
you can
that?
take multimodal. So right now text is one mode. Multimodal is image, video, text.
Gotcha.
So now computers can see, so computer vision, computers can hear. So that is now coming into ChatGPT. They made an announcement yesterday, actually, that multimodal is already coming out to GPT-4, which means you can click a picture of your fridge and you can say, tell me what to make.
Ooh, I love that.
And that is intelligence, right? You're using intelligence in the right way. And for everyone, mistakes, this is the mistake that most of us are making. We are going to ChatGPT or to AI to try to do the things that we are really good at. That's the big mistake everyone's making. Go and do the things you're not good at and ask intelligence to give you a superpower. My whole team has got a pay rise if they can start using artificial intelligence. And as a result, they are superhuman. I'm not joking, because they are giving themselves, they're augmenting their intelligence with artificial intelligence. They're not replacing their intelligence. They're augmenting it.
Can you give us some examples of how? What practical things are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, so my whole team is full-time in the Philippines, and English is not their first language. So bolstering that with artificial intelligence is massive, right? A lot of us are not graphics designers. A lot of us are not lead generators, or we don't know how to write a landing page. Artificial intelligence can do that, right? A lot of us are not good at a lot of really, really important business things that we're still learning, we don't have experience with. Artificial intelligence can help you with that. SWOT analysis, if you don't know what that is, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Any new thing you're doing or any current thing you're doing, if you've not done a SWOT analysis on that, you have blind spots in your business. And if you're trying to do it on your own, it is very hard because you're doing the SWOT analysis with blind spots, as opposed to doing it with intelligence that has no bias, so you can see everything the way it is. And that is the way you can use AI to get things out that probably might have been lying on the back burner for a while.
So how do you, because obviously if you put a bit of bias into the prompts, then that's going to give you a biased answer. So how do you structure a prompt in a way that is unbiased and it's not going to get you a biased answer as well?
I'll just ask it a question like how you would normally ask a question of someone that you don't want bias from. So don't put like if you want your answer to be biased in the way that you kind of say, hey, when you get this input, I want you to take this input and process it like this. That is biased because you're telling it how you want it to process your input. Now, if you're asking it, do a SWOT analysis on my product, it's going to look at threats, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths from a place that you're not seeing because you don't have that bias. So if you're kind of filling that out, you already have a structured way of looking at the world, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't know that structure. So getting that fresh perspective is where you can start to sort of see the blind spots that you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to talk like real practical stuff because I know my listeners, they've heard about AI and they're like, I don't really know I don't know how to use ChatGPT beyond telling it, hey, can you write me a caption about this for Instagram? So we've talked a little bit about ideation. What about on the creation side, the content creation side, whether that's podcasting, social media? What are some awesome ways that somebody can start to use it that they might not have thought about?
Yeah. So if a lot of us business owners, online business owners who've never been to marketing school don't realize that there are marketing frameworks and copywriting frameworks which the world is built on and marketing is built on and content is built on. So we kind of just use whatever we've been taught or whatever we've used in the past before and just replicate that. Now, the best way to use artificial intelligence is to take a framework that exists and then apply your particular personalized situation to that framework. Now, that could be the sunken cost bias is a framework that you can use to write a landing page where someone has invested money into something and they don't want to lose that. And you can write copy from that perspective. Now you can find a whole bunch of copy frameworks that, you might not know of. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, go search them. There's lots and lots. There are different frameworks in that are made for particular instances. So depending on where you're at, if you're kind of creating a landing page, you're creating an email nurture sequence, you're creating a sales page, you're creating a sales email, whatever it is that you're making, there's a framework for it. So find that framework, figure out what are the pieces of the input that framework requires, and then ask intelligence to do that for you from your personalized vantage point of this is my business, these are the people I help, this is the way, this is the outcome I give them, this is how I give them the outcome. Now apply this framework and write me some sales copy. Now that will really, especially with someone who's not good at copy, right? I'm not a good writer. I hate writing, and actually I hate editing. And as someone who can write code in 21 languages, what I hate is debugging. So which now artificial intelligence can do both those things for me. And it's saving me so much of headspace, and it's saving me so much of energy, that, that's why I'm a huge advocate for seeing how this is working, because it's really, really saving me energy.
And in terms of producing your podcast, how are you using AI in that whole process?
Yeah. Everything is AI'd. So,
except your voice, I hope.
Even that can be AI'd, by the way, using 11 Labs and using Descript, which
we use that.
Sometimes if I do make mistakes and the team puts in a word, but it sounds like I have said the whole sentence, but it's actually edited using my voice, and it's only one or two words that are used to complete the sentence. So I feel like Descript is probably the best way to get into AI, because it does it with content that we are already used to. Mm-hmm. So you can take a video, it'll use AI to transcribe it, and then it'll use AI to search for ums and ahs. It'll search for repeated words. It'll use AI to search for gap. It'll use AI to fill in words. There's all this really rich functionality that Descript has embraced, which I think is probably the easiest way to start using artificial intelligence, because then you can create better content and put out content that you've already recorded anyway, and just kind of make it nice and consumable. And you can do that with a few clicks, using AI, which at one point, I mean, Steph, when I started doing podcasting, I had to look at the waveform. I can tell you from a waveform what's an and an ah. Yeah. Right. And now I don't think anyone even looks at waveforms when they edit.
Yeah.
So that has changed quite a lot.
If I see anybody editing their podcast in GarageBand, Audition, any of the things where they're looking at a waveform, I'm like, sorry, what are you doing? You can do this in Descript now. Like, it's so much easier. Yeah. And this has all just happened in the last, 6 to 12 months. It's just exploded. It's become so much easier.
Yeah. And the main reason for that is, so we've known these algorithms, machine learning, deep learning algorithms for decades, right? This has been around for a long time. What has changed is that computers have gotten faster, so processing speed has gone up. Network speeds have gone up, and storage has become cheaper. Because of these three main factors, the last year has exploded. And that's why everyone thinks that AI has just come. AI has been around for a long time.
Yeah, okay. So I know there are people who are listening to this right now who are thinking, oh, like I'm a copywriter, or I'm a social media marketer, or I'm insert other business role here. I'm really worried AI is going to steal my job. It's going to steal my business. It's going to make me irrelevant. What would you say to those people? What advice would you give for them?
Well, the same advice I would give a driver who would tell me that their job is going to go, it is going to go. Drivers in particular have had at least a decade to make a change. So if a driver comes up to me now and says, hey, my job is going to go to driverless cars or driverless vehicles, I'll be like, dude, you had a decade to prepare. So I would say the same thing for everyone now. You have time to prepare. Don't use ignorance and lack of knowledge to be in your comfort zone and do the same things again and again the way you've been doing it.
So essentially really being open to pivoting, looking out for those opportunities. Do we know what those opportunities might look like at this stage?
I think there's there's obviously a really meta way of looking at it, but there's also a really woo-woo way of looking at it. And I'm going to start with the woo-woo. I think human intelligence is only so small because we can't remember everything. We're not as fast. We're not as accurate. If we practice, we can, but just in general, we're not. But we can augment that with artificial intelligence. right? We can augment our human intelligence with artificial intelligence. And then if we align that with divine intelligence, then we have an ethical way of using AI. Okay? Because if we can't use our human way of ethics because we don't have the best track record of ethical ways of doing things.
No, we don't.
No, we don't. So that alignment of human, artificial, and divine intelligence is a really good way to start to align yourself. If you kind of go, okay, where am I going? So you just kind of come back to that straight line. In terms of opportunities, I feel like things that you thought was not possible, that you couldn't learn or you couldn't do or you couldn't achieve, whatever that might be. Now, for a lot of us creators, we might have courses, and this is a lot for a lot of us, right? We have courses that we've never released because, we don't have a landing page or we didn't have email sequences to onboard someone once they got that. You can do that in an hour right now, and you can have that MVP up, running out the door, so you can go and focus on your next creative activity, whatever that might be. So not only does it get rid of burnout and anxiety and having all these spinning plates, it actually helps you ship, which for a creative entrepreneur is probably our biggest weakness, because we love creating. Shipping is where we get stuck. So I feel that is the biggest opportunity for us business owners right now, is like ship as quickly as possible. And you can create at speed right now, personalized, in your voice, authentic, for you, for your clients, for your business. There's never been a better time. To give you an example, when I first started to play with AI, this was in this current version in February. And from having the idea to people buying and having 28 grand in the bank was 11 days.
Wow.
11 days I didn't have the idea at all before 11 days. I had the idea, and then 11 days, 28,000. I've never seen that speed. Now, fast forward a month later, and I had all these people that were like, oh, I love this thing. Can you train me? Okay. From idea to having 33 people and my first office hours in that cohort, 8 days.
8 days.
8 days. And in that time, I wrote a sequence of 30 emails. I wrote a landing page. I wrote a thank you page. I wrote all sorts of different trainings for this cohort. And it was so fast. And it was in my voice. And it was for exactly what I was trying to convey. And it was so quick. I mean, I've never seen this kind of speed.
And what tools are you using for this? Are you using just normal ChatGPT? Are you using other tools?
Yeah, great question. So there's a variety of different tools. I think at the starter level, ChatGPT 3.5 is plenty. You don't even need the plus. Claude 2, if you're in America or the UK, or if you're anywhere else on the planet, you use a VPN and you can get into Claude 2, Claude2.ai. And again, you can use the free version. Claude 2 is very powerful because it got a big context window and it's got a big model as well. So it's very smart and it allows you to put in a lot more information and process a lot more information. So to start off with, I think there are 3 tools. The free version of ChatGPT, the free version of Claude, and Descript is probably the 3 AI tools that I would get in first. Then I would upgrade and start going into GPT-4, which is the plus version. Because with GPT-4, you get access to the data analysis, you get access to plugins, and you get some really cool things that you can't do with GPT 3.5. Both GPT 3.5 and 4 there's a really important function inside settings that you need to enable, which is called custom instructions. Now, custom instructions is the most powerful little utility that's there. And if anyone here is complaining about it not sounding like you, it's because you're not using custom instructions. So inside custom instructions, you tell it who you are and what you're about, and you tell it how you want it to respond, and it'll do it exactly the way you want it to do. So you can use that in 3.5 or 4. But those custom instructions are super important. That really helps with context. Now, context is what makes everything. I mean, we've heard about this. Content is nothing. Context is everything. The same thing is with artificial intelligence. So if you're giving it a generic question, like write me an article on artificial intelligence, it's going to give you a generic response. But if you give it context, like write me an article for creative business owners who have an online presence to adopt artificial intelligence in the simplest possible manner using X, Y, Z so that they can implement and they can do it straight away. That is more context. You see how that prompt has changed from just a generic prompt? That is what I'd love you, your listeners to learn, because it's like, that is a superpower. So if you can structure that prompt in that manner, wow, you can create some amazing things. I got goosebumps even thinking about it, because I've been able to I'll give you an example. I'm in Dubai right now, and I had a meeting here a few months ago, and I remember in the meeting, I asked, so what is the biggest problem you're having right now? And they said, we have a problem in transportation of dangerous goods. So I'm like, what kind of dangerous goods? Drugs? They're like, no, drugs are illegal here. They're talking about petroleum and plutonium. So the biggest problems they were having is the transportation of petroleum and plutonium. I did a SWOT analysis in front of them, and I turned my laptop around while it was sort of generating. And you could see there were 3 of them. They all leaned in like that, and they were looking, and then they went back. And then one person said to me, Ronsley, my team of 7 people took 3.5 weeks to give me this. Now that is power right there.
I love that. And I think that is a beautiful note to end the conversation on AI. Ronsley, I have one question that I ask all of my listeners that I didn't ask you last time you were on the show because it wasn't imperfect action back then. And that question is, can you tell us about the last time or a time when you took imperfect action?
I do that all the time.
Well, we know that.
If you know, I mean, you know me, and I do that all the time. But I'm going to be very specific because this is something that I'm really good at when it comes to business and entrepreneurship, but maybe not as good when it comes to my personal life. So I'm going to give you this as an example. Every time I fall off the wagon when it comes to fitness, getting back on is always imperfect action. Because in my head, I feel like I have to be perfect, because I remember the last time I went for a run and it was perfect because I had, 3 months of practice under my belt, and I'd been running for 3 months, and I remember that time, but I haven't run in the last 6 months. So I can't expect that run to be the same or feel the same. And the only way I'm going to get back to that point and enjoy my run again is to take imperfect action. And I feel that's the same with anything when it comes to business, comes to life, and comes to marriage, relationships. I think they all sort of fall in the same category. I think there is no thing called perfect action. I think after you take enough imperfect action for long enough, you get to a point where you just start playing, and everything just is in this beautiful flow. So I'd suggest to everyone, take imperfect action until you get to a point where it is just muscle memory, and that's when you start enjoying yourself.
I love that. And it's funny because as I was asking that question, something clicked in my brain where I'm like, I've known you for 7 years, and I've never known you to ever overthink anything, ever overplan anything. You're probably one of the people I know who takes the most imperfect action. And it shows. Like, you've built so many things because you've been able to take that imperfect action when other people are still sitting there and planning and thinking about all of the ideas of the things that they want to do that they never actually do. So Ronsley, thank you so much. Oh, yes.
Can I just say that I learned that from Agile methods, and that's the big shift that I think everyone should take. Everyone is talking about Scrum and all these Kanban methods, and the basis of Agile methods is to just do small iterations. Mm-hmm. And those iterations, when you do a small iteration, you have more knowledge to the next iteration. Sometimes we think of the whole thing to be perfect, but there's no way to know what's perfect until we take those small iterations to learn what's next. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for having me on the show. I love chatting with you.
No, thank you so much for being here. I think this is now your third time on this show. It's been every time you join us, it's great. And I know my listeners are they're going to leave the show with their brains falling out of their heads right now because of all of the stuff that they've learned about AI. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today.